One man who came here from India in the early part of this century, his name was Vivekananda. He came here to, he was sent here really, and showed up in Boston, I think 1910, and wrote some beautiful things. He's really one of India's great saints. And he had these to say. I used this at the beginning of the third part of Your Sacred Self. He said, "The blossom vanishes of itself as the fruit grows. So will your lower self vanish as the divine grows within you." Just like a blossom vanishes as the fruit emerges, so will the lower self vanish as the divine grows within you. And the divine is not some religious message, some orthodox thing that you have to memorize. The divine is that thing that Pierre Teilhard called the glue that holds the entire universe together, something called love. And that's what it's really all about. And this love is really the very thing that holds your life together. Did you ever think about the moment that you die and head back to nowhere, that your body begins to disintegrate? This thing turns into dust, and the instant that life leaves it, it starts to... So what is it that was holding it together and keeping it from doing that? There is something holding you together and keeping it from just like turning into dust. And that thing that holds it together and allows you to be whole is this force that is invisible and in another dimension. And it's getting to know this force that is at the uppermost in my consciousness. And when you understand that when you come to trust in yourself, or trust in this inner divine part of yourself that is not physical, when you trust in the noticer rather than that which you notice, that you're really, when you come to trust in yourself, you're really trusting in the very wisdom that created you. You become one with the universal wisdom that is your creator, that brought you from the picnic to the room and leaving the room. See, what we have to learn to do is abandon the paradigm that other people or other things or other circumstances are responsible for our life, and instead know that we chose it. And we must learn to develop an inner candle flame that never flickers, though the worst goes before us. And that inner candle flame tells us in our logical mind that if I have a problem inside, then the solution has to be where the problem is. So I will stop looking out here for the solutions to anything that's going on in my life that isn't working, and begin to ask myself, how am I processing my world? And some of the things that we've been handed are that other people are responsible for our lives, that your talent is handed to you and it's dispersed in certain amounts, and there's certain things that you can do and certain things that you cannot do. We've been taught that more is better and that we should chase after things while our higher self is always saying just be peaceful. We've been taught that the petty tyrants who show up in our lives are people that we should ignore and we should hate. I want to tell you something. The most influential person in my life was the most tyrannical. The man who abandoned me when I was just a few months old, who put my mother in a hospital on several occasions with his beatings, who spent 5 years in prison for stealing from the blind, selling their things and keeping the money, who walked away from a family of 3 boys during a depression and never paid a cent in child support and stole from everyone he came around, who required me to go into an orphanage for the first 10 years of my life and never showed up once to even say hello or I'm your father. who then visited that same abuse on 5 additional women and died in New Orleans in 1964 of cirrhosis of the liver as a pauper and had his body shipped to Biloxi, Mississippi, was my father. This petty tyrant who showed up in my life was someone that I had grown up and been taught to hate. But when I found myself at his grave in 1974, just a few months before I wrote Erroneous Zones, I had a transformational epiphany. A natohi, a great awakening, a great seeing, when I was able to forgive my father. And in the process of forgiving my father, I was introduced to enlightenment and was able to get my life on purpose once and for all. The end result was that my life absolutely turned around, and we are here tonight sharing in whatever I have to share with you because of that experience. And this petty tyrant, who so many of us think shouldn't have showed up in our life, the abuse that we had, the abandonment that we experienced, the relationships, the people who screwed us badly, the people who owe us money, who stole from us and all of that, we don't understand that it's all in order.
Second verse of the Tao Te Ching. Quote, "Under heaven all can see beauty as beauty, only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good, only because there is evil. Being and non-being produce each other. The difficult is born in the easy. Long is defined by short, the high by the low. Before and after go along with each other. So the sage lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. The sage can act without effort and teach without words, nurturing things without possessing them. He works, but not for rewards. He competes, but not for results. When the work is done, it is forgotten. That is why it lasts forever." Unquote. Living the paradoxical unity. Has it ever occurred to you that beauty depends on something being identified as ugly? Therefore, the idea of beauty produces the idea of ugliness, and vice versa. Just think of how many concepts in this duality belief system depend on opposites. A person isn't tall unless there's a belief system that includes short. Our idea of life couldn't exist without that of death. Day is the opposite of night. Male is the antithesis of female. What if you instead perceived all as a piece or a glimpse of the perfection of oneness? I think this is what Lao Tzu is suggesting with his description of the sage who lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. Imagine the perfect oneness coexisting in the apparent duality, where opposites are simply judgments made by human minds in the world of the 10,000 things. Surely the daffodil doesn't think that the daisy is prettier or uglier than it is, and the eagle and the mouse have no sense of the opposites we call life and death. The trees, flowers, and animals know not of ugliness or beauty. They simply are, in harmony with the eternal Tao, devoid of all judgment. As the sage lives openly with apparent duality, he synthesizes the origin with the manifestation, without forming an opinion about it. Living without judgment and in perfect oneness is what Lao Tzu invites his readers to do. He invites our wisdom to combine perceived opposites and live a unified life. The perfection of the Tao is allowing apparent duality while seeing the unity that is reality. Life and death are identical. Virtue and sin are judgments needing both to identify either. These are the paradoxes of a unified life. This is living within the eternal Tao. Once the dichotomies or pairs of opposites are transcended, or at least seen for what they are, they flow in and out of life like the tides. Practice being a living, breathing paradox every moment of your life. The body has physical boundaries. It begins and ends and has material substance. Yet it also contains something that defies boundaries, has no substance, and is infinite and formless. You are both the Tao and the 10,000 things simultaneously. Let the contrasting and opposite ideas be within you at the same time. Allow yourself to hold those opposite thoughts without them canceling each other out. Believe strongly in your free will and ability to influence your surroundings, and simultaneously surrender to the energy within you. Know that good and evil are two aspects of a union. In other words, accept the duality of the material world while still remaining in constant contact with the oneness of the eternal Tao. The debilitating necessity to be right and make others wrong will soon diminish. I believe that Lao Tzu would apply the Tao Te Ching to today's world by suggesting the following. First, live a unified life. Enter the world of oneness with an awareness of the propensity to compartmentalize everything as good or bad, right or wrong, beautiful or ugly, are standards of the physical world, not the Tao. Contemplate the insight that duality is a mind game. In other words, people look the way they look, period. Criticism is not always necessary or helpful. See the unfolding of the Tao inside everyone, including yourself, and be at peace with what you observe. Be a good animal and move freely, unencumbered with thoughts about where you should be and how you should be acting. For instance, imagine yourself as an otter, just living your otterness. You're not good or bad, beautiful or ugly, a hard worker or a slacker. You're simply an otter, moving through the water or on the land freely, peacefully, playing and without judgment. When it's time to leave your body, you do so, reclaiming your place in the pure mystery of oneness. This is what Lao Tzu means when he says, when the work is done, it is forgotten. That is why it lasts forever. In other words, you don't have to leave your body to experience forever. It's possible to know your eternal self even in the embodied condition. When duality and judgment crop up, allow them to be a part of the perfect unity. When other people create dichotomies, you can always know oneness by practicing the Tao. Also, accomplish much by trying less. Effort is one piece of the whole. Another piece is non-effort. Fuse these dichotomies, and the result is effortless action without attachment to outcome. This is precisely how you dance with someone. You make an attempt, assume a position, listen to the music, and let go all at the same time, allowing yourself to easily move with your partner. Combine the so-called opposites into the oneness of being without judgment or fear. Labeling action as a fine effort implies a belief that trying hard is better than not trying. But trying itself only exists because of beliefs about not trying. Attempting to pick up a piece of trash is really just not picking up the trash. Once you've picked it up, then trying and not trying are irrelevant. Understand that you can act without the implied judgment of words such as effort and trying. You can compete without being forced to focus on outcome. Eliminating opposites paradoxically unifies them so that it is unnecessary to identify with one position. I imagine that in today's language, Lao Tzu would sum up this second verse of the Tao Te Ching in these two simple words. Just be. Do the Tao now.
I did an interview yesterday on this cable vision channel, and this young man, he said to me, he's a young kid right out of school, he said to me, I'm going to ask you some really tough questions. I'm going to make you sweat. So I was just sitting there, he said, he started asking me things like, why should I buy your book? You know, and I said, I don't really care if you do. I just wrote it, and if it's out there, and if you want to get it, fine, and if you don't, that's fine with me too. And he said, well, how is your book different from anybody else's book, and what makes it better? And what do you say to all of the people out there who say that you're just peddling, positiveness and trying to make other people feel good and you're making money off of that? I said, they may be right. I said, he said, that's what you tell them? I said, yeah. And then when we were off camera and we were walking out, he was a very nice young man. He said, boy, you just skirted right away from all of those tough questions. And I said, no, there's no such thing as a tough question when you are what Maslow called independent of the good opinion of other people. When you are beyond the need to be approved of, when you are beyond the need to have somebody else think that you're terrific, when you have slain your ego just a little bit. And believe me, I work on this hard, all right? And I'm just scratching the surface on it, all right? But as I get better and better at it, I find, in the Course in Miracle it says, if you knew, and underline knew as know, all right? If you knew who walks beside you at all times, you would never experience fear again. If you really knew that all the things that Deepak and I had talked about this afternoon, that this universal intelligence is there, that the universe will handle the details, that it's all perfect, that it's in order, if you really knew that and weren't consumed with anything else related to your ego, you would be so free. It's like somebody would come up to you and call you a jerk, and you'd say, you got a good point there. And someone else would think that they didn't like the way you said that. You say, that's fine. And you're looking at two people, and many of your questions ask that. You're looking at two people who get a lot of criticism from our professional organizations, from people out there, from colleagues, from people who are disaffected with that, from fundamentalists, from it's all over the place. And it's like when you talked about those three things about purpose. When you know you're on purpose, it's like that old Chinese proverb, that the taller the tree, the harder the wind blows. The more you get up, the more wind you're going to see coming your way, and you just sort of let it go. It gets very peaceful.
There are certain features that distinguish these people that I'd like to define for our audience.
Sure, do it.
The first one is that their internal reference point is not their ego, it's not their image, but it's their immortal spirit, which is without beginning and without end. The second is their internal dialogue is not, as Wayne was saying, what's in it for me? Their internal dialogue is, how can I help? The third is...
That's a great mantra, by the way. How may I serve? How may I serve?
How can I help? Because if that's dharma, if I can help, then everything that I do out there, give out there, it comes to me, back to me.
Yeah.
The third characteristic is that there is wisdom and security in insecurity. That one should factor in that life is, by definition, uncertain. And it's a miracle that sometimes in that field of uncertainty we introduce an intention and magically appears. But if we relinquish our attachment to all the time want things to be in a certain way instead of how they actually are, then that's struggle. There's an expression I heard a long time ago, I don't even remember who said it. The person said...
Probably me.
Yeah, probably. Maybe it is. When things don't seem to go my way, I let go of my idea of how they should be, trusting that I do not know the picture, the total picture. Because if I knew it, I'd know it's okay. So that is the wisdom of insecurity, the wisdom of uncertainty. And then, of course, the behavior of people who experience timelessness, it's spontaneous, never in anticipation of a response, never for approval, never the need to control. External goals go away, internal goals become much more important. Material goals are important, but they should not dominate our internal goals, which are the need to love, the need to be loved, the need to acquire wisdom, the need to discover our spiritual identity. And then finally, as I said, it is that there is loss of fear of change. Because all fear that exists is the fear of mortality in disguise, is the fear of change. Get in touch with that part of yourself, which is beyond change, and then there is no fear.
It seems to me that fear would disappear in our lives completely if we knew that that divine omnipotence that flows through everything flows through us. If we really knew that and had that awareness and lived with it, that then there's always, of course, the issue of do you just walk through life and not worry about anything, not be consumed with anything, because everything's just all handled for you and just taken care of, or do you, as Jung put it, he said that's an enormous paradox that they talk about in the Gita, that's cleaving the opposites. He put it this way, he said, all of you, at the same moment that you are protagonists in your own life, making choices, at the same instant, you are also spear carriers, or the extras, in a much larger drama. In fact, he said, and he studied this for a lifetime, he said, you are doomed to make choices. So you've got to live with both of those opposites, and when you sort of cleave that opposite, you get very peaceful and you get purposeful, and it doesn't mean that you're resigned and say, oh, there's starvation in the world, so I won't be concerned about it. What you do is you don't get attached to it, and you don't tell yourself that it shouldn't be happening, and you say, yes, indeed, it must be a part of the divine plan, but so at the same instant is my desire to end it. So both of those are existing. So that's what you go with, your desire to end it. And you don't become one more part of the problem where you're just judging it.